What I'd like you to do now is open up our next sample file. So I'll just head up and choose File Open, and you'll have to navigate to your desktop and into your project files, into Part 1, into Lesson 3. Go ahead and open up that file there. And this file simply contains some text here that I've created for us. What I want to do here is achieve sort of a three-dimensional effect on our text here, almost like, imagine like the Superman logo or something like that on our text here. So if you like, you may want to zoom in just a touch. There we are. And what I'll do is, with my black arrow tool selected here, I'll hold down Option or Alt on the PC and click and drag out a copy. Don't forget to hold down Shift to keep the duplicate nice and straight. And I'll also hold down Option and Shift or Alt and Shift on the PC and click and drag from one of the corners here to shrink my copied text here and sort of place it something like this. Next, I'll make some simple attribute changes. I'm going to change my fill color to a blue, and I'll also remove my stroke. And I'm going to do this all with keyboard shortcuts. So I'm looking at the bottom of my toolbox right now, and my fill is on top. I'll just hit my X key. That switches the stroke to on top, and then I'll hit my / key to set the stroke to none. So this is what I'm looking at here back on my page. I have something like this. Now the idea is to blend the two shapes together to attempt to get this 3D effect. So I will marquee around both objects here. I'll head up to Object, all the way down to Blend, and then Make. Now what happens is, because the last setting that I used for my blend options was specified steps, I only get this one extra step happening in here. So this is no good. So I'll go back to Object, down to Blend, and then into my blend options. I'll switch to specified steps, and you can see there's only one step happening in there. And I'll change this to a much higher value, maybe something like 100, for example. And I'll hit Tab here. There's the effect that I'm after. I'll hit OK, and then deselect to look at my text. And oh, it didn't work. I did not get the result that I was after. Now, why didn't it work? Well, here's the thing that you need to know about blends. Blends are based on stacking order. So what's happening here is the original object, the red text that we started with, is blending into the blue text on top. Now, how did that happen? Remember, we held down Alt or Option and we dragged out a copy. That copy is actually on top of the original red text in the stacking order, even though they're not overlapping each other. And obviously what we want is the opposite happening here. So how do we fix it? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to undo what I've done here. Command Z on the Mac or Control Z on the PC. And I'll highlight my blue text here, and here's a command that you saw a few lessons back here. This is sort of a rehashing of a previous command that you saw. I'm going to head up to my Select menu, and I'll choose Next Object Below. And sure enough, there's my red text. So I know that my red text is behind my blue text. So what I'll do is I'll change my stacking order here just by using keyboard shortcuts. Try Command-Shift close square bracket or Control-Shift close square bracket on the PC. That brings this guy on top. How do I know that he's on top? Well, I could go Select and then Next Object Below. Sure enough, the blue text highlights there. Okay, so now my red text is on top. I'll highlight it here, and then I'll choose Object, Blend, and then Make. Once again, I only get that one step, so I'll have to go in and adjust my blend options. I'll go to Specified Steps, and then I'll type in 100 and Tab. Now it's looking more like our Superman logo, so there we are. Now we can do a couple of other neat effects here with our blends. I'll highlight my blend here, and I'm going to hold down Option on the Mac here, or Alt on the PC, and I'm just going to create a duplicate. Here it is here. You might want to zoom in just a little bit as well so you can see this. Now I mentioned just a moment ago that blends are based on stacking order. So you can achieve a couple of interesting effects here, especially with text. So what I'll do here is I have my blend happening. It looks okay here, but I'm going to go and reverse my blend order. So with my blend selected here, I'll go Object and then down to Blend and then Reverse Front to Back. And what that does is switches me back to where I'd started. That's exactly the same as changing my stacking order here. Now the next thing that I'll do is switch to my white arrow tool and then highlight each of my blue letters here. I'm just holding down Shift and clicking on each of my letters all the way across. bend this. And what I'd like to do is apply a black stroke here. So black was the last color that I had used in my toolbox, so I have it available here. So you can click on it there, or you can go and grab it over in your color palette. And now I have this effect happening. Now here's the neat part. I can go back to my black arrow tool. That highlights all of my blue letters. And because it's part of a blend, I can move this guy around here, unless I accidentally deselect him, which is an unfortunate thing that happens sometimes. So I have to go back and grab my white arrow tool. I have to use my white arrow tool because my black arrow tool will grab the entire blend here, which is not what I want. So I have to go back and shift click everything with the white arrow tool. I'll just hit V on the keyboard here to switch back to my black. And now I can continue scaling and moving my text exactly the way I want it. Something like that. And there's how you can use blends on text to create interesting 3D effects. Okay, what about some other effects that you can apply to shapes? Things like gradients and so on, all using blends. I'm just going to hold down my spacebar and drag down a little bit until I have some empty space here that I can work inside. And then what I'll do is I'll draw two different stars. So I'll grab my star tool here and click and drag. I'm going to get rid of my stroke color here. Again, you can use your / key if you want. There it is there. And here's what I'll do. I'm going to copy the star here. Command C on the Mac or Control C on the PC. Hold down Option and Shift and click and drag on one of the corners to shrink it down. And then what I'll do is hit Command B to paste in back. So in a previous lesson you saw Command F to paste in front, Command B to paste in back, or of course on the PC it would be Control B or Control F. And I'll switch my fill color here to perhaps green. There we are. So I have something like this happening. Now what I want to do is I want to blend these two shapes together, but rather than the shapes being at opposite ends of my document, they're each stacked one on top of the other. So I highlight them here, and then I'll go up to Object, down to Blend, and then Make. And I achieve this sort of an effect. So it's a pretty cool effect, especially when you start doing things like this on text, which I totally encourage you to explore. And of course I can hit the A key on my keyboard to get my white arrow tool, click on the topmost star here, hit my V key to switch back to my black arrow tool and begin rotating, achieving all sorts of different color effects and gradations and so on. So like I say, I totally encourage you to experiment with your blends to create custom gradients like this, and definitely try it on text. That's where you can get some really neat effects.